All right, everybody, welcome to the Remodelers on the Rise show. I have a guest with me today. He's from the greater Sacramento, California area. His name is Steve Tankersley, Tankersley Construction. Steve, thanks for joining today. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Steve and I have known each other for approximately 4.5 minutes. It's about as long as we've been talking, but I have seen Steve's name pop up in the remodelers community, the private Facebook group that is available to remodelers that are out there across the country, or I guess technically the world. There's some Canada people, so we could say like international, I suppose. But if you go to remodelerscommunity.com, you can request to join that. And I've seen Steve's name pop up, and he has shared some just golden nuggets, some good ideas, some thoughtful, generous ideas. And there was one in particular a month or two back that was related to how he is approaching pricing his work. And I had reached out to him after that of going, Steve, I'd love to do a podcast episode where you share a little bit more about how you're approaching your pricing. I come from the frame of mind that there's not just one right way to go about running a successful remodeling business. There's also not one right way to go about pricing your work. There's success that I have seen from my clients and I've seen in the industry of a lot of different variations to how you approach your business and how you approach your pricing. So our goal today will be one, to hear, Steve, a little bit of your story and maybe some inspiration through that. And then also to focus primarily on how you're approaching the pricing side of things. So if you could tell us a little bit, just your backstory of how you came about getting into your business and starting that back in 2018, and a little bit of the journey, and then we'll dig into the pricing side.
Yeah, hey Kyle. So I'm going down a little memory lane here. Trying to make it short. I started in construction. My dad was, a truck, right? Literally a truck.
What's his name actually, Chuck?
Oh, okay. No, it was Dennis, whatever rhymes Dennis, right?
Yeah.
So I grew up on job sites doing plumbing. I learned fractions by, cutting copper pipe and all that. And I remember when I graduated high school, he goes, yeah, you got to go to college. And I said, okay, what do I do? So I applied to some colleges, got into a couple, and I went to Sacramento State University. And I remember looking at the catalog and looking at the majors available, and there was this one called construction management, right? And I love construction, and I want to be management, and that sounds great. Except I was horrible at math, and I hated math, and I didn't really know what I was getting into. So I went to Sac State for construction management. Little did I know construction management is actually an engineering degree, and I'd take free calculus classes and physics and all that stuff, and I graduated in 7 years. Took me a while, and when I was in school, I was a carpenter, kind of working for a remodeling company, and then I went into commercial construction. So I became a project estimator for one of the largest construction companies in the United States. I learned a lot there, and in that environment, it is completely different what we do now. But when I graduated, I became a project manager for the same company and worked my way up. And around 2017, my wife was pregnant with our second kid. And if you know commercial construction, it's very regional. You're working 2-3 hours away from home. You're working, minimum 9-10 hour days, plus an hour and a half commute. And so it was
if you're lucky, right? Sometimes even further.
You're leaving the house at 5 o'clock in the morning. You're getting home at 6 o'clock at night. And so it just really wasn't conducive to our life with kids. My wife also worked in commercial construction. And in 2016, I actually got my contractor's license, and I was doing kitchen and bathroom modeling on the side for some friends and family. We did our own project. I remember I used the rest of our paternity leave in 2017 to remodel our kitchen. And I was just so happy. I was like, man, I'm like home Monday through Friday. I'm in my community. I'm going to Lowe's. I'm going to Home Depot. I'm home when I want to be home. And I can do this for people. I can really manage these projects because there's such a low bar in residential construction that if you come in and you actually deliver, detailed proposals, you show up on time, you answer your phone, you're already ahead of 90% of your competitors.
Yeah.
So long story
So,
short,
so
2000,
pause there though. That's
yeah,
just a reminder for everybody listening to this. Do not overlook the fundamentals, the basic fundamentals. How are we doing in our response time? How are we doing in doing what we say we're going to do? Are we booking the next appointment and giving yourself a self-imposed deadline? Are you sounding cheery on the phone when you have the opportunity to serve the person or the client that's calling you? Don't tire of the fundamentals. Carry on, Steve.
yeah, yeah. And so in commercial construction, when you're building a $200 million hospital or power plant, you don't have any room for disorganization. You don't have any room for not having all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, right? There's just no room. There's such a high bar in that industry. That's all I knew. So when I went into this, I'm like, yeah, we're going to have a critical path schedule for our projects. We're going to deliver detailed proposals. I went into my first project. I was using Microsoft Primavera P6. I'm doing critical path scheduling. I'm using AIA billing templates, and I'm like way overboard, right? But as in 2017, I had my license. My wife is pregnant. I actually lost my job. I called my wife on the way home, and I'm driving down the freeway. I remember this, and I called her. I said, "Hey, I just lost my job. I don't really know what to do." She's 6 months pregnant. We have maybe $2,000 in savings. I'm driving a $2,000 truck because I'm putting all my money away, into savings and retirement. I was making a good living, but we really didn't have any customers. I had a website built because one day I thought maybe I would start this company. I have my license, and she goes, "Just go do it. This is your opportunity. This is a sign." So I sat down at my desk and I was like, "Okay, let's come up with a plan." And it just, I always believe that timing is right for everything. And at that time, a friend of mine had called me, and he didn't know I lost my job. He just knew I was a licensed contractor. And he goes, "Hey, my sister needs a kitchen remodel and she can't get anyone to call her back. And would you be interested?" I said, "Absolutely. I can go today." I went and got that job. It was my first project. At that time, this was 7 years ago. It was an $85,000 kitchen. It was a great first project. And I went in and I called one of my mentors, and I said, "Hey, what do we charge for markup on a kitchen?" And because in my role in commercial construction, our markup was anywhere between 3.5% to 4.5%. That was overhead and profit, everything for the business, the company. But I was dealing with $200 million projects, so completely different. And he goes, "Hey, yeah, you can get 20% markup on these jobs."
Woo.
I was like, 20%.
Put your shirt up. Don't let your heart fall out.
Yeah. So I went in, I did this first job. I think I did it for 18 because he said 20. I cut it down to 18. And I did all the demo. I did all the framing. I had a buddy help me with a lot of the work. We hired a drywall guy and a cabinet guy and everything else we did. And we did that job in, I think, 6 weeks, $85,000. I think I, netted $20,000 in 6 weeks. And dude, I was over the moon. And that was a great learning experience. It put some capital in our business. And at that point, honestly, I was just trying to make ends meet. My wife was pregnant. I'm like, it's my first job, one step in front of the other. And pretty soon word got out and we needed to have employees and we're doing multiple jobs. And I'm doing estimates. And, we were doing pretty good that first year. We did about $1 million in revenue our first year. And I honestly wasn't even really trying, to be honest with you. I didn't really have a plan. I just said, this is what I need to do for my family.
Piece by piece was coming together.
Doing it, and a lot of it was organic. So I learned a lot in that time. We were a lump sum builder. And, as time has gone, today we have, there's 11 of us on our team. We self-perform carpentry, and we've learned a lot, as we go.
Awesome. One thing before we dig into the pricing, you mentioned when we were talking before we hit the record button, I was asking how business was going, and you said it's everything I have ever dreamed about, and that really just jumped out at me because I think as business owners, whether business owners or some employees that are listening to this, but primarily for the owners, there's kind of a vision or a dream that we have when we start our business, and all of a sudden that vision that you had, you're actually doing it. And instead of recognizing that, instead of realizing that perhaps, yes, things are busy, but I do have some freedom and flexibility to spend time with my family. I do have the ability to kind of control my own destiny. It feels amazing to be able to just make decisions, and whatever the case was for you. I think so often when we do maybe hit that vision of everything we dreamed of, instead of recognizing that or sitting in that or reflecting on that or enjoying that, we're just already off to the next thing. So I appreciate it in the next dream, which is okay, which is good, but we need to slow down and recognize how far we've come. That can be encouraging, that can be motivating, that can be help us to be reflective on kind of the journey that we're going on. So I appreciated that you said that, because I think I, for one, am not good at doing that. And I think there's a lot of people that do need to slow down and recognize everything that has happened and the good things that have happened, instead of maybe focusing too much on what's not working. Anything you want to riff off on that?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about everything I've ever dreamed of, it's, income is certainly one thing, but it's the family time. It's being able to, I'm at every one of my kids' sporting events. I'm at every performance. I'm at every single drop off. I'm at almost every pickup, right? I couldn't do that with my old job.
Yeah.
And I heard a quote once that the first 5 years is where you learn to be good, right? After that is when you get rich. And that's reality, right? So if you spend 5 years working on your business, that money will come. And income wise, we've done well, we've invested on things, and that hasn't been the driver. The reason why I started this business was to be with my family, to be at those pickups. And I couldn't do that with my old job. There's just no way.
Yeah.
I also get to work with my wife every day. She's my partner and in the business, and she runs our operations. And not many people can say that they get to talk to their wife every day and know what's going on. And usually it's like, hey, honey, how was your day? And they tell you about it. Like, we just work together, and we're in so many aspects of our life, and for better or worse. And I'm really grateful for that.
Awesome. I do need to plug the on October 2nd and 4th, 2024, there is a retreat that my wife and I are putting on called Remodel Your Marriage, Life, and Business. And so much of it is kind of talking about what you're talking about there. There's a lot of challenge between balancing that. There's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of patience. There's a lot of planning. We're going to spend a few days in Northern Michigan kind of reflecting on that and really crafting a plan and a vision for the upcoming year for you and your spouse. So if you go to remodelerretreat.com, you can learn more about that. And commercial, Steve. And you guys might want to join us as well. Northern Michigan in the fall is probably far superior to Sacramento, California, or it might be similar.
I think it's superior. It's
It
very
is.
hot here.
There you go. There you go. Cool. So let's dig into the pricing side of things. Thanks so much for kind of unpacking some of your story. So talk to us about, you hinted at kind of where you started on the pricing side of things. Tell us a little bit of the progression there, what you've learned, kind of how you've unlocked each different maybe level that you've taken there, and a little bit about how you're doing it currently.
Yeah. So the big driver for us is we've always been traditionally a lump sum fixed price builder. Hey, here's the cost for your project. Here's the scope of work. Not a penny more unless you sign a change order, right?
Yep.
And we still do a lot of that work. As our projects got larger and more complex, currently our average project size is about $650,000, $700,000. As those projects get larger and more complex, we started learning that, hey, this model may not be the best fit for these projects. And what I mean by that is, there's a lot of reasons, but mainly it's risk. And when you start talking about a $3 million project that's going to be 2 years long, maybe lump sum fixed price isn't your best option, because you're getting paint bids in 2024 that you're actually not going to enact until 2026. Who knows what's going to happen to the paint market if that can really even be in business, right?
Yeah.
So you're taking on a lot of risk. In 2021, we built our first custom home. It was a $4 million, 7,000 square foot home. It's a lot to take on as your first build, right? We did lump sum. We did really well. We had no slippage. We tracked our margins. We tracked the, cost to complete all the way through. And we were really fortunate to have a really dialed budget and a really dialed cost to complete. A lot of builders in our area lost a lot of money on projects during that time. what we developed on that project set a lot of tone for future projects. Number one, that was a fixed price project, but we were super transparent. We attached the lumber order, we attached the cabinet order, we showed what those things cost us because it protected us. So we said any variance from this number, positive or deductive, is a change order, right? And that protected us in a lot of ways. But we also learned that the client had some frustrations too, because we wanted to show them everything. They wanted to upgrade their gutters, for example, to copper gutters. And they didn't understand why that was a $65,000 ad. And I couldn't just show them the breakdown because then it would expose our margins and everything. It would just lead down a rabbit hole we didn't really want to go down. So what we found was, hey, on future projects like this, maybe cost plus is the best option. So we have a big network just through your community, Kyle, through other communities. And we reached out to some contacts. We went to a summit and we learned a lot about cost plus. We did it in commercial construction, but we never really tried it here. I learned about what you should do and what you shouldn't do. My biggest fear was we're no longer a 20% markup builder. We're significantly more. We learned that what our actual margins need to be. And if we just put 20% on projects, we wouldn't be in business. But when cost plus comes around, most builders are in that 18 to 20% range. So how do you make your margins on cost plus, but still have, a lower markup, right? That was a big thing that we developed and have come away with.
Gotcha. So you were talking about a new construction project there on the remodeling work. Let's say it's a nice $600,000 addition type project. Are you approaching it in a similar way? Are a lot of your projects going towards that cost? And we'll kind of unpack how you are approaching the cost plus here. Are a lot of your projects going towards that cost plus model? Or are you still doing a decent amount of fixed price on the quote unquote smaller work, which to a lot of people listening might be the bigger work?
So I'm going to answer to your question. And I'll always tell people my preference personally, if I could have anything in the world, it would be a lump sum price. Here's your number. We're not going to deviate it. We're going to manage it internally. And we're going to try to knock it out of the park, not only for the client, also for our budget. The reality is, there's been so much escalation in pricing. Only information out there for pricing on projects is bad information. There's very little people out there saying, yeah, kitchen remodels are $150,000. I'm shouting from the rooftop. It's like, that's where our kitchen remodels start. There's not very many people out there saying that it costs $600 a square foot to build a house, because everyone still thinks it's $250.
Yep.
And so if the only information out there is bad information, if I tell people your house is $600 a square foot to build, they don't know me. They don't believe me. They don't know how I got to that number. So number one with cost plus is one of the advantages is it can help overcome that trust gap, and you can show them what you're making on that project. And if they're okay with that, that's great. That's what we make. That's what we need to make as a company to sustain our operations and to put money in our pocket in the day, because this is not a nonprofit business. And so number one, the transparency helps build that customer trust. It is a lot more work. We kind of have a threshold in our company, and it's not set in stone. But if it's a $500,000 renovation, it's probably a good fit for cost plus fee. Am I going to do grandma and grandpa's bathroom on a cost plus and show them every invoice and probably not. I just want to know what it costs. So really, it goes down to what's your client. Some of our clients are CPAs. Some of them are if you follow DISC, they're very SC. They want to know every little thing. And maybe that's a good candidate for cost plus fee. So know your candidate, know your client, number one. And do they want this information? Is it going to be overwhelming for them, or is it going to be helpful for them? We have a couple of projects right now, large renovations in construction. The only way we got these projects is through cost plus transparency. If I just given them a price, they would have not believed it. They would have not trusted it. They would have been skeptical the entire way. And I can say that with certainty. Yeah,
I want to follow up on a few of those things, but let's unpack your cost plus approach for a minute, because this is what kind of prompted me to want to talk to you about it. Is yes, we have a cost plus number, a markup on all of the costs on a project, but then you have another aspect to it and a couple other approaches to it. Share that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we see these a little differently. A lot of contractors, when they talk cost plus, they're really referring to a time and materials agreement. And they're, oh yeah, it's be cost plus fee, cost plus 18%, and then we'll give you the invoices and the receipts. And I think it's going to be about $1 million. That's really the wrong way to do cost plus fee. You should not be doing that. You should, for number one, take an approach of cost plus fee, just like you would lump sum. And so what I mean by that is create your bid packages, get bids on every single trade, do your lumber takeoff, get what that project's going to cost down to the penny with your realistic, degree of certainty. That's number one right way to approach cost plus fee. You should have bids on pretty much every trade and every material. Number two, you can still approach it with a cost plus with a lower markup, let's say 18, 20%, depending on what your business operations are. Number one, set your goal of what you want to take home on that project. If your goal is 10% is what you want to make on net profit as a company, then you need to know what your back end is and what is your overhead, right? How much is your rent and your insurance and all that stuff, and figure out what's your direct cost to that project. Meaning, if I didn't do this project, would I have this cost, and your indirect costs. And so typically your direct costs might be, you won't think of insurance, right? It's based on a percentage of the revenue in your company. What else are direct costs? Is your biller trend subscription a direct cost, right? Those all are things that you can list on that cost plus fee proposal. So be super detailed on that, not just this big catch-all of 20% covers all this stuff. If you can be really granular and take out everything you can from your company's overhead and put it to that project, you can reduce that markup and you can sell it to a client a lot easier.
So insurance comes up, software comes up. What are a couple others that you kind of put in different line items?
Punch list, right? If you look at a project, you can look at percentage of your revenue. Let's say you do $1 million and you spend, 2% of your revenue is on punch list, then you should put 2% on that project. Same with warranty, same with software, anything job related. If maybe it's gas for your business, maybe it's cell phones. With us, the biggest cost that you should be allocating on a cost plus fee project is your project management, right? That's a line item cost, just like your plumber would be. Yeah. A lot of contractors miss that and they go, oh, this just falls my overhead. No, you're going to be a project manager on your job 3 days a week, and that's allocated 24 hours a week for 18 weeks at $85 an hour. It's going to be a big item, right? With us, what we take an approach on cost plus work is we don't want to be feeling like we're billing clients for every conversation. We don't want our project managers to feel like they can't stop and talk to them about their kids, sports plans and feel like they have to rack up an hourly bill. We look at it as we have a weekly management fee, and that covers as much time as we need. And we figured that out in our back end on averages of what our costs are. And we charge the client per week on that project. And so a couple of things that really have come out, by doing this is, number one, our team sees these numbers and we tell our team, hey, we're charging this client $4,000 a week to manage their project. Did we deliver $4,000 this week in value for them? Is the site clean? Did you talk to them? How many times did you go to the job site? And if the answer is that the job site's messy and they stopped by for 1 hour that week and, they were working on other things, then we didn't deliver that $4,000 in value because the client sees that. And so it holds us to a higher standard. And with that weekly management fee, obviously we have a little more margin built into that can help our bottom line. So we're not, we're marking up subs and materials 20%, but hey, we have this weekly management fee that's actually capturing some additional profit on the project.
And that comes out to approximately what a week?
On a new build, if we have a lead carpenter on site, we're about $4,000 a week.
Okay. So
a client might spend, $200,000 on 1 year project and just project management direct costs.
Right. Not a big project. So part of that 4,000, number one, instead of needing to cover the cost of a project manager in your markup as part of your overhead, our overhead goes down because our project management is getting taken care of as a job cost. So that's a big factor there. And then the other thing you're mentioning there is, we might actually have an actual cost of $3,000 a week. So there's some additional gross profit dollars that we're gaining through that. So a couple things that I wanted to highlight. One is if you approach this cost like Steve is describing cost plus, if your approach is, you know what, we can kind of be sloppy with the design and the development side of things. We're just going to pass along the invoices. We're going to toss our 18% above it and bada bing, bada boom. You're doing time and material work. You're not doing cost plus, and you made a very good distinction there. So keep that in mind. The other thing that you're hearing here, and he's going to unpack it a little bit more when he talks about his labor rate for self-performed work, is that his markup and the corresponding margin on a nice $700,000 addition, if he goes the cost plus route, it is going to have a, let's say, 20% or whatever that is markup on all of our costs. But then we have a $4,000 a week project management. All of a sudden our margin just went up. And then in addition, you have a little bit more of a high burdened self-performed labor rate, which you can maybe tell us about, that is moving that overall margin, even on a cost plus project, well out of the 20% margins and into the 30s. Let me repeat that. That is very important for us to hear, is that it's moving into the 30s and margins instead of it being, well, it's cost plus, I'm at a 20% margin overall. That's not how you've really approached it. Is that a fair depiction?
Yeah. I mean, and so our goal is we want to make 10% on a project net. And our overhead is typically, I think we're right about 15% of our revenue goes directly to overhead, right? So,
Okay.
you know, basic terms, if we're not hitting 25% margins, we're not even getting close to what we're at. So we're not going to hit 25% margins with a 20% markup, right? We're going to have an 18% margin. So we have to overcome that somewhere. And
Yes.
It's going to be in our labor, and we have to be able to disclose that to clients. You talked about our self-perform rate. We have our own carpenters in house. We have 4 carpenters that work for us. We do trim, we do minor, framing, drive out repair if we need to, stuff that other framers might not pick up. With us, we've figured out what our burden rate is. Our burdened rate meaning what our hourly rate is for our carpenters after we pay for their trucks and their phones and all this stuff. We're like $65 an hour, I think. Now, if we want to make 100%, if we want to make a little bit extra money on our self-performed labor, which is more risk, and there's a lot of reasons for that, we want to be about $120 an hour is what we want to bill a client to. So you tell your client a skilled carpenter is $120 an hour. I don't care what market you're in. We're in California. That's a pretty good deal, in my opinion. If you want to hire a carpenter, come out to your house, who's a very skilled trade finish carpenter, you're going to pay a lot more than $120 an hour to have someone come out to your house to do that work. So we can sell that to a client. We're making, let's say, $50 an hour on that. But that goes back to the margin, the bottom line. That covers, all of our business operations and our bonuses and all that stuff as a company.
That 18% margin from the 20% markup, it just went up because we had 100% margin on our self-performed work. And then we also have our project management weekly fee, which is also helping and assisting.
And a lot of people, Kyle, might listen to me like, well, yeah, it's easy to say you have 10 employees, you're doing all this million revenue. There's a lot bigger companies than us. I realize there's a lot smaller companies than us, maybe one person show, sole proprietor. You can take the same approach. You should still, I help a lot of local companies. You should still be charging for project management for your own time. When it was just me, I charged for project management for my own time. That's outside of the markup. So you also, let's say you're Amazon company owner, charge $120 an hour or more for your own labor on top of all that project management. Like, you're never going to be able to move up in your business unless you're building these salaries and these positions within your company. And that's what we did as a company. We built these into our company. Even when it was me doing the demo, I was still charging, $100 an hour for that time. So I could hire a carpenter for $40 an hour.
Yeah. And hear the 120 and adjust it down to your comfort level, but hear the strategy behind it more than anything else for the people listening. Your number might be 90, your number might be 100. But the other thing that you're hearing is sales has the word confidence and the word sales. Those two things have a very strong correlation. And Steve, the way that you presented of like, I'm here in California, but I can sell that all day long, $120 an hour. When they have a plumber come out to fix that, they know it's already going to be a $400 bill before they even start it. When they have an electrician out, they're already preparing for a $350 bill, even if it's something quick. That's where the rates are. So you even presented it and sold it in a way that was like a skilled carpenter these days in this market, absolutely. And he's worth every penny. So part of however you approach your pricing, you believing that you're worth it, you believing that you can sell it. You heard that in the way Steve was talking, and that's an important factor in this. The other thing that you mentioned when you started to unpack this is, we started with this approach, and we learned, use the word learned, we learned that this model may not be the best fit, fill in the blank, in today's market. Fill in the blank with this size project, fill in the blank with this type of client. What I appreciated that I heard there is we have to, here on in the middle of 2024, a lot of things are the same as 10 years ago, 20 years ago. A lot of things are different. The cost of the projects that you guys are putting in front of clients is remarkably different than 5 years ago. And we need to at least have some open hands to say, maybe the way that we've been approaching pricing and selling our work, we may need to try different things. And the fact that you said, I'm learning that this model, that's a remodeler who is paying attention, is looking out for what is the best experience, yes, for our client, but also that can still protect us and help us build a successful business. So I'm hoping people aren't getting caught up on the detailed specific of the amount that you're doing, but more kind of the strategy and philosophy behind it.
Yeah. And Kyle, thing is, we've been doing this. We haven't been doing this for, I'm not going to come on your podcast. I've been doing this for 5 years. And when we started this about a year ago, and really what it came out of was a burden of trying to explain how much these projects cost without giving a line item estimate.
Yeah.
When I first started the company, I would give line item estimates, demolition, framing, all this stuff. And all those numbers had margin and markup built into them. And it created a lot of problems because if demolition was an $8,000 line item, they could obviously say, I could do it myself on a weekend with my neighbor for nothing. And so we were, having constantly battle that, right? Or maybe his painting was $10,000 and they go, hey, I got 3 painting bids, they're all $6,000. And why are you $10,000? You have to explain. So what I found was I don't want to do line item estimates. I'm a firm believer of anti-line item estimates with your margin built in. So either be transparent and show what your costs are and show what you're making on a project, or just give a lump sum price and say, this is what it costs. And I'm happy to give you any kind of backup for this, and be transparent. But, there's all kinds of different, how many different ways this is going to cap, right?
Yeah.
What we're finding with this, we've been closing out jobs that are cost plus. We're finding that these cost plus jobs are meeting the same final numbers as our lump sum projects. Because there's, not saying we had much slip really to begin with, but there's like almost no slippage. We're making more money in self-perform work. So what we're seeing is results, and things are ending up about the same. But it's also, I'll warn everyone listening to this, to do cost plus right is a lot more work. This is not a, we're open book. Our clients can come to our office anytime and audit us. We open up the files. We'll show them what we paid all our vendors. We'll show them the check stubs anytime. That's a right that they have to come do. So you have to be prepared for that and be prepared to do it right. Just don't put one foot in the water and then, expect results. You have to be all in. You have to have a robust accounting system and project management system behind
good details. As you've experienced this over the last year, you talked about kind of the overall results, kind of the gross profit margin on the projects. You're saying, they've been comparable to, our fixed price side of things. That's important to know. The only way that you're able to do that is because of the way you're approaching self-performed labor and the way that you're doing your management fee every week. But overall, are you kind of building up momentum of going, I think this is kind of the approach that we're going to embrace more so and more so in the coming years, or is the jury still out on that?
The jury's still out because it's one of the biggest challenges is when you open up your books to scrutiny, you're going to get scrutiny. So we just, I'm not going to come on your podcast and say everything's always rosy. We just lost a job that was in pre-construction. It was an ADU that we were in design for. The client had a $500,000 budget. Everything seemed on its face we could hit all these numbers. As we're designing it, the scope of the project grew significantly. It turned into a 1,600 square foot footprint with an RV garage, and it was no longer a $500,000 project. The only way I could kind of salvage this project in design was to sit down with him and say, hey, this is where we think is trending. I'm open book. We're cost plus 20% on this. This is how we got here. And the client at that point can no longer really argue the numbers. They can't say, well, I don't know why paying $12,000. Like it's all the numbers are there. It adds up. What they can argue is how much you're charging. And they went back and they said, you charge $4,000 a week. And if you think this job's going to be 26 weeks, I'm paying $88,000 in project management plus another $100,000 in markup. Like that's outrageous. And, I think his words were, that's significantly more than anyone in the market charges. And I just responded was, well, what do you think is fair? And he didn't have an answer for that, of course. Mm-hmm. And obviously this wasn't a good fit. We got through budgeting, and, the reality is no other contractor is going to show them that kind of breakdown. Yeah. And no other contractor is going to tell them what they're making, but it opens you up for scrutiny. And it's a blessing and a curse. Correct. Because our clients are the ones that they know what they're paying you and they see the value in that. You better damn well deliver that value. If you're charging $4,000 a week for project management, or $2,000 a week, or $1,000 a week, whatever it is, make sure you're delivering that value every single week. Yeah. And if you're not, they're probably going to be mad at you. Yeah. And thank you for being, look, there's pros and cons to this. Newsflash, everybody listening to this, there are pros and cons to every approach of your pricing. Do not come on my podcast, and you didn't do this, but other people might, and say, fixed rate, one number at the bottom is the way to go. There are pros to that and there are cons to that. And especially in the last 4 years, as prices have gone like this, the cons are showing their ugly face even more often on that. Cost plus, there are pros and there are cons to that. Sometimes it works beautifully. That transparency and that little more open book allows them to put their guard down. And like you said earlier, builds trust. It also, yes, has the con of it opens up some things to more questions. Michael Anschel and I did a course related to cost of project execution. There's a lot of similarities in what you're talking about with your approach to cost plus and cost of project execution, or the COPE method. The COPE method is a little bit more of a fixed price. There are pros, and yes, Michael, even though you might not admit it, there are cons to that approach. So you're picking between the pros and cons, but you also need to be paying attention to how the client experience is going and how the selling is going. The other thing that I'm hearing from you, Steve, and that's just a good reminder for people to hear, is that you can only be successful, and when I say successful, be solidly profitable, consistently profitable, if the foundation of however you approach pricing is that you truly know your numbers. You've heard it from me. You've heard it from any coach you've ever heard talk about remodeling, or any experienced remodeler. You have to know your numbers. You have to understand your project management costs, your overhead costs, your net profit goal, how your cost of goods sold works. And Steve, that's also, I think, a lot of the foundation of where you're coming from is continuing to study and know all of your key numbers. Yeah, and I think that another key factor in COPE versus cost plus, COPE is more of a lump sum price, fixed price. Cost plus, if you take the approach of fixed price contract, that's the right approach. But you got to remember, your clients need to be aware that you're transferring the risk of the price and all this onto them. And as an exchange, they're getting a much more bare bones proposal. They're getting this is best world scenario. You're transferring that risk. So if the painter goes out of business and he was $10,000 and the only other painter you can find is $15,000, guess who's paying that $5,000? The client is. And those are difficult conversations. The way we navigate that too, which I wanted to touch on, is we build a contingency into our project. And so it's a $1 million project. We may have a 2.5% contingency in there, and that's a line item, and that's the owner's money. So let's say it's $25,000. This is your money. We're going to have it. We have control of it. This isn't your piggy bank to upgrade your gutters and fit better countertops. This is for when we start digging your foundation and we find granite and we have to blast it. Like, that's what we're going to pull from.
Yeah.
And so if we don't use it, great. That goes back to you. We've also had approaches where there's a contingency and it's any remainder is split 50-50. You can have a unique approach with that. You say, hey, we have a $50,000 contingency. If we don't use it, you keep half and we keep half. It gives us incentive to have a more accurate estimate. There's all kinds of ways that you can kind of incentivize these projects. But also, if you're doing cost plus, like I said, build a contingency into that. And so that way the client doesn't have to think, oh, I have to put another 20 grand aside. Like, it's all built in. The goal is we're going to finish this project under budget and ahead of schedule. And if you can do that, and if you're giving money back at the end of the project, you told it 1.2 million, and you actually give them $50,000 back at the end of the project because you didn't use their contingency, that's what they're going to tell all their friends. They did it on time, under budget, they give you money back at the end of the project. And that's going to be a huge thing, because all you ever hear about is how every contractor is over schedule and over budget.
Yeah. Shows that this is not our first rodeo. We know what to expect. Things will come up, and here's why we have this in here. That might be a good takeaway for folks. Going back to something you mentioned when you were just sharing your original story, is you coming from the commercial world and a really tight schedule and detailed proposals, and you used the phrase a couple of times, critical path schedule. That is something that I think we, as residential remodelers listening to this, you need to hear that pretty clearly, especially that critical path schedule. When you use those words and apply that to a residential remodeling project, what I hear there is we take the schedule seriously. We devote time and effort to creating it, to updating it, to communicating it. We make sure that, yes, we have some buffer days in there, but we communicated very clearly to our trade partners. We communicated clearly to our team, and we are focused on delivering this project on schedule. Number one, that leads to a much better client experience. That leads to a project that could take some remodelers 5 months and it turns it into 4 months. That's good from covering our overhead standpoint. It's good from a client experience standpoint. And I would say there's a lot of remodelers who are too lackadaisical when it comes to their schedule. And you kind of come naturally into this. Of course, we're going to have a tight schedule. Of course, we're going to pay attention to this. We're going to have an organized schedule. So I wanted to just emphasize that as maybe another takeaway from what you shared today. Steve, anything else that you any other little notes that come to your mind related to the topics we touched on that would be of value to your remodeling friends and peers listening to this?
Yeah, I mean, one of the, we've had a lot of rapid success in our company, and a lot of it is attributed to organizations what we've been part of. And you do coaching, we have coaches, we have organizations we join. Feel free to reach out to me directly about any of those organizations through Instagram. Is really a good way to get in touch with us. Also, having that cloud-based software for your schedule, for your estimates. If you're doing cost plus fee projects, over $200,000, you really got to have some kind of cloud-based software. There's a lot of options out there. We use Buildertrend. I'm a big Buildertrend proponent, only because we've been with them since 2018 when we started, and that's helped to propel a lot of our growth and set us apart from our competitors. So those two things, just having a coach, having a network, and having some cloud-based software, and actually using that software is going to set you apart and help you implement these things we talked about.
Well, that's be good. Yeah, and I approach these things from there's a lot of room out there for coaches. You didn't use their name, but you can use it, even though you're on the illustrious Remodelers on the Rise show. You've been a member of Remodelers Advantage and Victoria's group over there since you started in 2018. And I've had a lot of clients over the years that are part of RA. So you were being respectful to me, but I approach it from a standpoint of we're all friends. We're all kind of trying to lead remodelers in a similar path of, being successful in business and life. So you didn't mention it, but I'll go ahead and mention it. Go ahead.
Well, and when we joined Remodelers Advantage, it's a huge cost investment, especially if you're a small company. We were doing $1 million a year in revenue. And we didn't really have the money at that time to join, but, everyone told us you can't afford not to join. And that's been so true for us. And it's helped us go from, I shared a story when we started marketing at projects 20%. We thought we were doing really well. Our first meeting, we got hammered. They're like, you hardly make any money. You're not marking up. You should be marking up 60, 70%. And I was like, hey, not in my market. There's no way we can support that. Well, it is. And everyone told us that's BS. It's head trash. And I pushed back, and the reality is that it is head trash. And you don't just, increase your markup just for the sake of it, but know what your business costs. And I would not be in the position, our company would be in the position where we are today without that advice from that mentor group.
Yeah. Yeah. And the idea of, and it's incremental. I was talking to a remodeler yesterday, and he's looking at one of the peer groups I have going on, and he's like, so tell me, what's the value of it? And you start going through it, and, yes, we're going to just fix pricing issues. We're going to fix sales process issues. You're going to stop doing your estimates for free. We're going to focus on marketing. And so much of it is tangible, but there's also tremendous value in getting around remodelers who are a few steps ahead of you. Just that confidence, getting rid of that head trash, realizing, okay, I might not get to that level right now, but okay, I'm going to go from here to here. That's amazing. That's progress. So much of us running a business is about, are we trending in this direction? Are we continuing to improve day by day? Are we improving our systems, our checklists, our process, our training? And just keep working, remodelers, keep working day by day, of moving in that positive direction. Steve, that was an excellent episode, very detailed, very specific, and I think it allows a lot of remodelers, you're listening to this, to maybe think differently about some of these pricing approaches, and also kind of have their hands a little bit more open, and not be necessarily stuck in the way they've always done it, but to be open to other iterations of it. I appreciate you sharing your hard-earned wisdom, sir.
Thank you, Galia. If you're not growing, you're dying. So,
Bingo, bango. All right. Thanks, Steve.
all right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.